Okay, in this section we will cover our tools. Okay, so first, a pen rest. I use this vintage ashtray, has a pen rest, and it could double also as a water container. I could put water in here as well. I do have a little repurposed teacup that I found at a flea market that I use for my water container to clean my pen nib. Another pen rest that I've used for years, as you could tell this one's really well loved, is a basic simple soap dish. So this I think was under $2. Love this pen rest. Okay, so moving on to a pen nib. I'm using an oblique pen holder. It's oblique in that it comes out to the side. This helps me get a nice steep slanted angle when I'm lettering copperplate. This pen was made by master penman Michael Sell, one of my teachers. I love this pen. I've had it for about 20 years. I've definitely got my money's worth out of it. And this one also has a fixed flange. So most students use a speedball oblique pen holder. This is plastic, and it's actually two parts. So this can come loose if you need to clean it, or if it comes undone, just put it back together. The issue I find with this pen is that your pen nib will definitely move just from use and from cleaning. Whereas if you have an oblique pen holder with a fixed flange, your pen nib will not move. So I recommend upgrading to one. If you have a speedball pen holder and you decide to stick with it, then buy yourself another pen holder with a fixed flange. But if you're working with this one, what you'll want to do if you're right-handed is make sure that there's no imprint in this middle part. If I turn it around, it says made in China. That should face the paper. That should face down, okay? So I'm going to insert the pen nib in here. There's a circular part, maybe hard to see on this video, but if you have the pen in front of you, you'll see that there is a space along the rim for you to insert your pen nib. Okay, how I know I've put it in correctly is that if I hold it down against my paper, the pen nib, when I press down, the tines of the pen nib should open evenly. Not too much to the left, not too much to the right. And how you hold your pen is pretty low at the base of the thumb. So when I use a pencil or a disposable pen, I usually hold it a bit more vertical. When I'm lettering, especially copperplate calligraphy, it's pretty low. And the movements will be coming mainly from my wrist and not so much from my fingers, but my wrist will move. Okay, so once you've inserted your pen nib, you'll need to take off the coating that the manufacturers put on there to preserve the pen nib, prevent it from rusting. And how you do that is with fire or potato, but I actually never use a potato. I feel like that would be wasteful. So I would just light my pen nib just for a few seconds, and then I would dip it into water. I would wipe it. You'll need to have a paper towel handy because you'll be cleaning your pen nib often. Let me dip one more time. So how you know that you have removed the oils is that when you go to dip your ink, the ink should not beat up on your pen nib. So I could tell I did a good job. Most of the ink is stuck, and it's a lot of ink, so I'm gonna actually just tap it a bit to make sure any excess will drop off. So once you do that, your pen nib is good to go. Remember to clean your pen nib often. A clean nib is a happy nib. Your lettering will be so much better for it. So every few minutes, I end up cleaning my pen nib. And how I do it is a three-step process. I don't just instantly dip my pen nib into the water. It'll get black instantly. So what I'll do is I'll wipe off the excess ink, as much as possible. I got a good amount of it off, and then I'll dip it into the water. So the water will get dirty a little bit, but then I don't have to change it every 5 minutes. And then I use the paper towel to wipe off the water and any excess ink. Okay. So once you have done that, your pen nib is good to go. Remember, just from cleaning and use, this speedball pen nib will have your pen nib rotate. So you'll want to adjust it as needed. Make sure the pen nib is clean. So this is a pen nib, pen holder. Sorry if I'm confusing the two. So if you are left-handed, you may want to consider using a straight pen holder. And in this way, okay, I don't have a Nico G nib on there, and that's what I'll be using for this class is Nico G pen nibs. I tend to find that they're pretty sturdy. I have a heavy hand, and it's a nice medium to firm touch. So going back to left-handers, if you find that this angle is just not accommodating for you, then I recommend using a straight pen holder. And you can simply put your pen nib directly along the rim. Should fit right in. And see how that works for you. I also notice with a lot of left-hand calligraphers, they do tend to rotate their paper a great deal. So whatever feels good, you'll want to letter, of course, underneath and not hook, because the ink takes a long time to dry. So once you have your pen nib ready, and you have your ink all ready, I do use a small little ink jar like this. Depending on the ink that I'm using, I tend to use liquid sumi ink. I'll take either the top off. With this one, you could actually squeeze the ink inside your ink jar. I like to work with a very dark black, so this is an ink I like to use. I also tend to use walnut drawing ink, which gives me very fine hairlines. So, but for this class, I'll be using Yasutomo's Sumi black ink. So the first exercise that I recommend doing is just getting familiar with your pen nib. Okay, so when you press down, the tines of your pen nib will part and spread, right? So that's going to be your downward strokes. They're going to be the shaded strokes, the thick strokes. So for the first exercise, I recommend starting at the baseline, going up with a fine hairline stroke, doing a whole bunch of these and trying to do it at an angle that matches these slant lines here. Okay. It's fine if it's slightly different, just as long as it's consistent. So you do a whole bunch of upward strokes and then do downward strokes, and you see instantly how much thicker they are. So up and down. You could alternate or just keep doing a whole bunch of downward strokes. So again, I will demonstrate what is happening. Well, let me clean off the excess ink on my pen nib. When I go up, my pen nib remains pretty much the same. I'm gliding over the paper and it's a fine hairline stroke. When I go down, I am pressing and the tines of my pen nib are spreading to create that dark shaded stroke. Okay, so in general, in copperplate calligraphy, upward strokes tend to be fine hairline strokes. These are your thin strokes. Your downward strokes are almost always not. There are definitely some exceptions, which I will point out. But for the most part, when you are going down, you will be pressing, and those strokes will be bold. I'll say sometimes shaded strokes, for instance. So practice just playing with this pen nib. This is not only about angle, which is typical for a lot of calligraphic hands like italic, for instance, where the letter slant is 5 to 10 degrees, but the pen is being held, the pen tip is being held at a 45-degree angle, and that's what creates the thick and thin lines, right, for a broad edge pen hand. With copperplate, it is all about the pressure, all about the pressure that you are applying and releasing. Okay, so let's get started. So we'll begin with the lowercase I. Starts at the baseline here with a fine hairline stroke going up. Then I like to make a little line, and then I press all the way down, release my pressure, come up, and then to dot it, I press and release very quickly. Go up, press down, release pressure, and this exit stroke would then connect to your entry stroke. Okay, our next letter is the letter T, lowercase t. Starts in the same way, go up, and the T is quite short, it's taller than the I, but it's a little less than halfway of your ascender height. I like to make a little line, then I press all the way down, release my pressure, come up. And for the crossbar, I like to make a little wave just slightly above the waistline. Make a more straight crossbar at the waistline if you'd like. Let's do a double T. Sometimes the ink will pool a little bit. That does happen. Time to maybe clean my nib. Do another T, up, press, crossbar. Okay, the next letter is the letter J. Begins at the baseline with a fine hairline stroke like the I and the T. Then at the waistline, do a little line, and this next stroke is going to go all the way down to the descender depth, this line here. I'm going to press all the way down, release my pressure towards the bottom, loop around, cross over. Then dot it, press, and release. If you want a more circular tittle, what you can do is create a little circle that you fill in. Just fill it in. Let's do another J. Press all the way down, release your pressure, loop around, cross over. And this would connect to your next letter, this exit stroke of the J. So I don't have to do, let's say the next letter's I don't have to do an entry stroke for the I. I would start at this second stroke of the I. Our next letter is the letter A. We begin with a fine hairline stroke in the middle of the X height. This is our X height. So in the middle, come up, and then we press, come back around. We're basically creating an oval. And the next stroke, just press all the way down, release your pressure, and come up, and that part would connect to your next letter. So we could start it with an entry stroke, just like the I and the T and the J. So that would connect to the next letter. Let's do another A. The next letter is the lowercase d. first part is just like the A. You're going to make that oval. Start here, go up, press. Just try to meet it as best you can. The second stroke will overlap it, so don't worry if it doesn't connect just right. So the second stroke, the next stroke starts about 2/3 in the center height. I like to make a line, press all the way down. You see how it connects to that first stroke, and you go up. Do one with an entry stroke. Make your oval. Okay, our next letter is the letter G, which you already know because the strokes are ones we've already done. So the first one is like the oval shape in the A and the D. And the second stroke is like the last stroke of the J. Do an entry stroke, your next oval shape, press down, release your pressure and loop around. And that would then, the exit stroke would then be the entry stroke for your next letter. Do another G without an exit stroke. Your oval, press all the way down, release your pressure, loop around, cross over. The next stroke is the letter N, and it begins about midway on the X height with the fine hairline stroke going up and then down. You press. The second stroke, I'll break it up, starts with the fine hairline stroke, press and release. Let's put that together. Press, up lightly, press and release your pressure. And that would connect to the next letter. Or try to. Okay, let's do a couple more ends. Up, press, press and release. No pressure, pressure, no pressure, pressure, and then release the pressure. Next letter is lowercase m. Similar to the N, you're going to go up, press, and fine hairline stroke up, press, and release. The width here is going to be a little narrow than with your N. So release your pressure, press, for a shaded stroke, up, press, and release. Now if it's connecting to another letter, I'll just quickly clean my pen nib. Let's say I was writing am. Do my A. Up. Go all the way up and then press down for that first part of the M. Up, down, and then down, and release your pressure. Next letter is lowercase u. Start with the fine hairline stroke going up, then a bold shaded stroke going down. You release your pressure and go all the way up. Press down, release pressure, and up. So light all the way up, press, release, press, release. Now if I clean my pen nib and take the ink off, I'll show you again what happens when I press down. The tines of the pen nib separate, and that's how I'm getting my shaded stroke, right? Get some ink on there, go up. So now the tines are separating so that more ink can flow out. Okay, so that is your letter U. Now the next letter, in a way you already know, because the first part is just a slightly more narrow U, not too much. And then the second stroke is like the last stroke of the J and the G. All the way down, press, release the pressure, and loop around. The top of the page, blank sheet, our next letter will be the lowercase L. I begin with an entry stroke, a fine hairline stroke going up. Now when I reach the waistline, the L is unusual in that it changes angle. See how I go out like that? I'll just leave that one open for a minute. So if we were to do our cursive L, basically do it in one stroke. Go up. That would be our cursive L. But for Copperplate L, it is quite different. You go up, come out just a bit, press down for this shaded downward stroke. Going up is always, well, almost always, a fine hairline stroke. Keep the pressure really light going up. Our next letter is the letter H, and like the L, you're going to go up and then just go out slightly. But unlike the L, when you come down, you're not going to curve this. It's just going to kind of go straight on that angle. The second stroke, up, press, release. So remember the L did curve out a little bit. So, but with our H, we're going to go up, come out just a bit, go straight down, second stroke up, press and release. This second stroke is similar to our N, the second stroke of the N. So up, come around, press, our next letter is the letter K, and it's similar to the H. Go up, come out just a bit, press all the way down. Now the second stroke will go up, press, release your pressure. Then as you're going down, you'll press just slightly and then release your pressure. Another variation of the K. As you start here, very thin, and then press, release your pressure so the middle stays light. Start out light, press, and then release, and that would connect to your next letter. This would connect to your next letter too. The next letter is lowercase e. let's start it with an entry stroke. Say it's the first letter of a word. And then like the L, it would come out. I'll leave that one open. And then it will come around and press down the whole way. So you're basically changing their directions. And it helps to keep this space a little wider. So if I were to do just one stroke, like perhaps a cursive E, you see how that's more narrow? So this is the Copperplate E is a bit fuller, up halfway of the X height. I come out just like the L and press all the way down. And that would connect to my next letter. Let's say it's an E. So it's connecting to a letter with an exit stroke. You would start here and press and release. The next letter is the lowercase b, and it's similar to the L in that it starts the same way, but it ends a little differently. So I'm going to go all the way up to the waistline. I'm going to come out, press with the curve downwards, go up, and here I will press down and release, and that will connect to my next letter. So let's say it's an E. I do start my E a little lower. When I come around, that should connect with the exit stroke of the B. So let's do another B. If it's helpful to lift the nib, when you come to the waistline here, do so. You could move your hand a little bit because this is quite a big letter. Up. If I was connecting an A, start there. Do one more B. And please pause as you need and do a few more to practice and get it within your muscle memory. Next letter is the lowercase O, and it's similar to the oval in the A and the D and the G. Create an oval, go up lightly, press, and go to close it as best you can. Then the last stroke is similar to the B in that you press and then release your pressure. It's maybe a little smaller and lower. So let's do one with an entry stroke. Go up and around, press, release your pressure, press, release. Let's say a B was following. I could start the B here at the waistline, come all the way around, meet it. Okay. So let's do a couple more O's. Attach them. The next letter is the lowercase v. Begin about 2/3 up from in the X height, up lightly, press, release your pressure, go up, and like the B and the O, you're going to create this dot and release your pressure. This is going to be higher than your B or your O. The ending stroke, and how you would connect it is you'd space it so that this part of the stroke would overlap with the exit stroke of the V and that O. So again, the V, up lightly, press, release your pressure, up, press, release your pressure. So you can make your bottom's a bit pointy, typically your copper plate U's are actually not that pointy. They can be confused with, the V's can be confused with U's. So the next letter is the W. Up lightly, press, release your pressure, go up, press, release your pressure, and then like the B, O, and V, we'll press and release for that exit stroke. And that would connect nicely with your next letter. So let's do another a W, I'm sorry. Up, press, release your pressure, press, release your pressure, and your exit stroke. Press, release, press, release, press, release. The next letter is lowercase c. Start with an entry stroke, up, and the next stroke, just press down for a little dot, come up lightly, press, release your pressure, and then a fine hairline stroke to end it. Press, release, would attach to your next letter. Without an entry stroke, let's say the A came first. So that's the exit stroke for the A. I'd begin my C here. Go up, press, release. Our next letter is the lowercase f. I'll show you the traditional copperplate F, and then I'll show you the one I typically use in letter, which is a smaller variation. So the traditional copperplate F is quite the big letter. You start with your fine hairline entry stroke, and just like the L, you'll come out, be a little bit below the waistline, and then press all the way down to the descender depth, loop around, come up. You could come up below the, above rather, the baseline, and loop around, and that exit stroke would connect to your next letter. So that is your traditional copperplate F. Oh, looks like I have something on my pen nib, so we'll go ahead and clean it before I show you my variation. Okay. So the one I typically do is a bit smaller. It starts out the same way, but it ends differently. I press all the way down, I pause, release my pressure very quickly, and then I do a crossbar, which basically looks like this, and that would connect to my next letter. Okay, I'll do another one of those for you. Out to the side, press all the way down, and then release my pressure to give it like a more tapered look. So it's wide here, and then it slims down. And then the crossbar is basically something like this. I'll do another one of those. A little bit longer. Okay, the next letter will be lowercase p. So the traditional one starts out with your standard entry stroke, fine hairline stroke. Make a little line and then press down all the way for a thick shaded stroke. And the second stroke is like the N, goes up, press and release. Now I find most of my students do not like an open P. And typically how I do my P's is that I'll start out light actually. And I'll start below the waistline. With the fine hairline stroke, I press and then I release my pressure. And how I do it is that I press and then I'll cross over, and that will connect to my next letter. So I'll do a couple of those, which is on the handout. Up, then press, release, up, press, and cross over. And when you cross over, keep that light. And typically when you go sideways, it'll be a fine hairline stroke anyway. So up and above the waistline, just slightly press, release, up, press, release, and cross over. Okay, the next letter will be our lowercase q. Start with the fine hairline stroke going up, and then the oval, which you've done already a few times. Close as best you can. And then the last stroke, start at the waistline to do a little line, press all the way down, loop on this side, close it, and then come up for exit stroke. So the U, most likely the U, will attach to it. So another way you can do the Q, press down, press, and release and go out. But typically, how I do it would be the traditional way. Okay, we're on the home stretch here. So just have a few more letters to go. The next is the lowercase r. Begins at the baseline like most of our letters. Go up, and I go above the waistline. I press for a dot, release my pressure, press and release. So typically when you are making a downward stroke, you are pressing for a shaded stroke. However, with the R, there is an exception. This part, you're releasing your pressure even though you're going down. So up, press, release, press. Oh, there was a little bit of ink that pooled there. That will happen. So up, you could keep this open if you'd like. Press, release, and I'm not pressing too much, even though you could tell this side is a little thicker. As you're going down, it is easy to press. It's just something you'll have to think about as you're going down. I love the lowercase r, one of my favorite letters. Okay, so our next letter is lowercase s. So S is a bit steeper. So you see the angle's a bit different than the entry stroke of that R. I may have exaggerated this a little bit. Go just a little higher. That's a little better. The second part is above the waistline. I make a dot, press, release my pressure, and then I press again. So this is a traditional, oh, I have something on my pen nib, which I should remove. I think it landed somewhere there. So a traditional S press, you could press all the way down, release your pressure, and then dot, and then create an exit stroke. The S I typically do, and that I really like, crosses over, kind of like the P variation. I may do a loop, press, then cross over like this. Press. So there are many options for S variations. But the traditional one would be going up, pressing all the way down, releasing your pressure, make a dot, and then creating an exit stroke. What I typically do looks like this. So that's your letter S. Okay, so lowercase x begins in the middle of your X height and go up, press down, and as you're pressing, it's almost like you're going straight down. And there's another exception. Your second stroke is a downward stroke, but you're not applying pressure, so it should be a fine hairline stroke, and it would attach to your next letter. A variation is a one-stroke letter, press slightly, go up and around. You're creating these loops, and there's some shaded area in the middle for your downward strokes. So the one I typically do is this one. So if I was connecting to another letter, I would just go straight up and press down and then cross it over. Okay, so that's your letter X. So our final letter is the letter Z. Begin halfway if it's beginning halfway the X side, if it's the first letter of a word. If it's not, and it's attached to another letter, you can use that exit stroke to go all the way up. You can lift up your pen nib here, press again, and release. You want to keep this middle light. Another version, this will work better if the Z is the first letter of the word. I'm doing double Z's. And that completes all your lowercase letters. Congratulations.